I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for March 16th, 2021. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to our virtual Planning Commission meeting tonight as we continue to follow county orders to shelter in place and practice safe social distancing due to the threat of novel coronavirus COVID-19. As a reminder, items will be taken in the order that they are listed on the agenda. Before we get started, I want to briefly go over public comment procedures for the meeting for those who may be joining us for the first time. All public comment on items not on tonight's agenda will be taken during the general public comment, which is item number 3 on this evening's agenda. Comments on other agenda items will be taken only when that item is called. You may use the raise hand feature on Zoom to speak. If you're joining the teleconference by telephone, you may raise your hand by dialing 9 and 6 to unmute your microphone when prompted. Please only raise your hand at the time when the item on which you wish to speak is being called. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes, but time may be adjusted depending on the number of speakers. Lastly, we know that each of us bring different perspectives to this discussion, and we want to be sure that everyone has a chance to be heard without interruption. Thank you for your attention and consideration during this process. If we could now have roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Bondano?
Here.
Commissioner Martinez?
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Here.
Commissioner Meunier?
Here.
Commissioner Hsu?
Here.
Vice Chair Hunter?
Here.
Chair Radcliffe?
Here.
Thank you. For the record, I show that all planning commissioners are present for this evening's Planning Commission meeting. And for the purposes of this teleconference, I would also like to state that I am Lindy Chan, Principal Planner and Staff Liaison to this commission. The other city staff that are attending this meeting are Apollo Rojas, Senior Planner, Diana Odell, Principal Planner, Lynn Lancaster, Housing and Leadership Manager, Prasanna Rasaya, Senior Assistant City Attorney, and Christina Mateo, Administrative Secretary and Meeting Host.
Great, thank you, Ms. Chan. Next on our agenda is our approval of the minutes. We have minutes from February 2nd, 2021 and February 16th, 2021.
Move to approve.
Do we do them one at a time or together?
I believe we can do them together.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt and a second by Commissioner Hunter. Could we have roll call, Ms. Chan?
Certainly. Commissioner Bondano?
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Meunier?
Yes.
Commissioner Hsu?
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter?
Yes.
And Chair Radcliffe.
Yes.
Motion passes. The meeting minutes for February the 2nd and February the 16th are approved.
Thank you. We'll now go on to public comment. Do we have any people in the audience that wish to make a comment on anything that is not on the agenda at this time? I have one raised hand. Not seen any more. Great. Mr. Babbitt, welcome.
Thank you and good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Well, I'm speaking tonight to thank the Planning Commission for the recommendations regarding ADUs, which you sent to the City Council last fall. Your recommendations were thoroughly considered, the results of hours of community input, and your collective years of city government experience and professional expertise. I encourage the Commission to stay rigorous and maintain the process that you've established. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babbitt. I don't see any other raised hands. So we will go on to the consent calendar. Next item is the consent calendar housing element annual progress report for 2020. This is a consent calendar, so do I have a motion to move the consent calendar?
Move staff recommendation.
I have a motion from Mr. Bondano.
Madam Chair, I think the motion was by Commissioner Shu, but I will certainly second the motion to
Sorry,
accept.
sorry, had your hand up and that's where I went. Okay, motion by Commissioner Shu, second by Commissioner Bondano. All in favor? If we could do a roll call, Ms. Lynn Chan?
Certainly. Commissioner Bondano,
Yes.
Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Munier,
Yes.
Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Yes.
and Chair Radcliffe.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 for the consent calendar.
Great, thank you. Next, we will go on to item number 5, public hearing. This is for number 240 Twin Dolphin Drive. And this is a request for development of a 5-story, 202,010 square foot office building with a detached parking garage required by architectural permit, tentative map, and plan development permit. I believe that we have a couple of commissioners that need to recuse themselves. Commissioner Bondano.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I will be recusing myself from this particular item. The applicant, Sandhill Properties, is also in discussions with a local nonprofit organization on which I serve on the board. While there is no financial conflict or any consideration, out of an abundance of caution, I will recuse myself to avoid any possible perception of bias or impropriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bondano. Commissioner Schmidt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also be recusing myself from this project as I am actually employed by Sandhill.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Schmidt. We will see both of you later. I believe there is a staff presentation. If we could go to that, please.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Good evening. My name is Apollo Rojas. I'm the project planner for the project at Twin Dolphin Drive. Next slide, please. So I'll provide a brief overview of tonight's presentation. I'll discuss the background of the project. I'll give a overview of the secondary review process for the Redwood Shores Business Center Association, or as I'll be referring to it, the SBCA. Then I'll go into the project description and then discuss the site design and the proposed setback reduction or the requested setback reduction. Then I'll provide an overview of the building design and then go over the zoning's incentivized floor area bonus requirements and some of the features of the project for the FAR bonus, including off-site improvements, a mid-block crossing, and trail access. And then finally, I'll wrap up with staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. But first, I want to provide a timeline showing the progress of the project. This was first submitted back in 2018 and actually had a different design that has progressed along with the review process. So this has incorporated some of the comments from both the city and the SBCA over in the shores. So the site has a requirement within their covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or their CC&Rs, that require them to go to the SBCA to go under their architectural review committee process. And this is a 5-stage review process. The project would return to SBCA for stages 4 and 5 post entitlement if this project were to be improved, to review some construction details and on-site inspections. And so during this whole time, the project has undergone the standard city completeness review process where staff reviews the project and the necessary submittal materials for zoning compliance. And in July 2020, the project was reviewed by the Architectural Advisory Committee at a study session where the project then incorporated the comments from that study session and went back to the AAC in December of 2020 and was approved unanimously 5-0 for the site design and building design. The project was also then deemed complete by staff, and the project today would require approval of an architectural permit for construction of the building, a tentative map for the lot merger and the new parcel map, and a plan development permit for requested reduced setbacks. And those permits need to be approved by the Planning Commission. Next slide, please. So the site is located on approximately 4.68 acre site, or 200,000 square feet. And it's located at the corner of Twin Dolphin and Shoreline Drive in Redwood Shores. The site is surrounded by an 8-story hotel to the north, the Pullman Hotel, a 4-story hotel and a 2-story office to the southeast, and a 1-story commercial office to the northwest. So the site currently contains a 1-story office condominium complex, and this is scattered across 6 different buildings, like you can see pictured on the slide here. The project site is located in the Commercial Park, or CP, zoning district, which allows office by right. So they're exchanging office for a larger office. Next slide, please. And I spoke a little bit in the background about the design evolution of this project. Originally, it was proposed as 2 separate office buildings. So those would share one parking structure. And after a couple of meetings with the SPCA in the Shores, there was agreement that the site would be better utilized by using a smaller footprint. And that way you'd provide more open space and green space along the frontage instead of the interior of the site where only employees would be able to use it. This way, the public would be able to enjoy more of the open space on the exterior. And so in order to do that, the project would consolidate the buildings and increase the height by 1 story. So that's where we get the project we have with the 1 building design today. And the project is proposing to construct a 5-story, 202,000 square foot building that would be 89 feet tall with a detached 5-level garage that would be 43 feet tall. The site would contain a total of 690 spaces, 655 of which would be located in the parking structure. And that would be accessible from both Twin Dolphin and Shoreline Drive. Other parking spaces would be located in the circular surface parking court, and that contains 20 spaces, as well as on the other side of the site, a 15-space surface parking site adjacent to the Belmont Creek Trail. And of those 15 spaces, 3 would be dedicated to public access to the trail. So this project would comply for zoning standards for height and parking as well. Next slide, please. And the site design includes the office building and the detached parking structure. And these are separated by a pedestrian paseo that also doubles as the fire access lane in the middle, separating the buildings. This project would include a mid-block crossing for both bicycles and pedestrians. It could include an outdoor plaza area there at the side entry in front of the parking garage, and also include new sidewalks along Twin Dolphin Drive. So the SPCA, they have certain landscaping standards, and they recommended to retain the existing landscaping berm along Twin Dolphin Drive and to add the new sidewalks to the rear of the berm to retain the trees and open space that exists there. And this would also retain the trees along that frontage. And the site, again, is located in the CP zoning district for offices, and it contains setback standards that increase 1 foot for every foot the building increases above 35 feet. So for the taller the building gets, the more the setback increases. And the proposed 89-foot tall building would have, from the zoning, a 79-foot setback along both Twin Dolphin Drive and Shoreline Drive. So the applicant is requesting a plan development permit for reduced setbacks on both street frontages, including 44 feet along Shoreline Drive and a 49-foot setback along Twin Dolphin Drive. And the intent behind the setbacks is to better utilize the building footprint. This would pull the building closer to the corner and retain some of the green space and open space that was discussed by the SPCA. the SBCA, they actually have their own design guidelines, including 4 setbacks. So this project complies with those SBCA guidelines. And having the project alternatively meet the full 79-foot setback would likely result in a less desirable development pattern, with the probably fronted by surface parking, taller or longer building that would reconfigure the site to be less desirable from both staff and the SBCA's perspective. And staff finds that this project is improved with the reduced setbacks and recommends adoption of that reduced setback. Next slide, please. This slide shows the elevation of the building and the parking structure. The top view showing Twin Dolphin Drive and the bottom view showing Shoreline Drive. I'll let the applicant and the project architect go into the design of the building, but I wanted to highlight some of the things about the office exterior. This is comprised of a spandrel glass, but there's also a floating sort of curtain wall that wraps around the building. So the curved glazing at the corner actually is attached to the exterior and would almost float around the existing exterior of the building. The SBCA and the AAC, the Architectural Advisory Committee, they were very complimentary of this feature. And then the garage as well, it contains some interesting exterior features. It has what's called a kinetic wall. If you could look at the top image on the right side, that appears to be just mesh and plan, like just screening, but actually in person, the kinetic wall moves with the wind. A good example of a similar building, the SFPUC building, the Public Utilities Commission building in San Francisco, has a similar wall and is very interesting. And this exterior has been reviewed by staff and found to meet the architectural permit findings for design. In addition, the project was reviewed again by the SBCA Architectural Review Committee, was approved from stages 1 through 3, and our AAC recommended approval of the project for site design and building design in their December meeting. Next slide, please. And the CP zoning district has an incentive-based floor area ratio that provides a 20% FAR bonus or 0.2 bonus if a project provides publicly accessible pedestrian and bicycle pathways along a water's edge and connects to existing or planned bicycle networks. So a project must also allow for 10% of the project area to be public or quasi-public open space. Or in this case, that would be around 20,000 square feet, and they'd be required to record a public access easement for that space. In this case, a 20% FAR bonus or 0.2 would result in 40,000 square feet of additional office for the site, for a total FAR of 1 for the site. And the total building square footage again of 202,000 square feet. So the project would provide sufficient open space for the project to meet this incentivized bonus requirement. But also on top of the offsite improvements, wanted to highlight some of the other things. Next slide, please. They'd also be providing a mid-block crossing. So this would formalize an existing path that's used by nearby residents and mostly employees that would connect the site to the Redwood Shores Lagoon across the street, across Twin Dolphin. And that has other walking paths associated with it as well. So Redwood Shores Lagoon, this is a stormwater retention pond that's very large in Redwood Shores. And it's used for just its aesthetic views, aquatic habitat, and recreational activities such as boating, windsurfing, paddleboarding, swimming. This mid-block crossing would include a design for both bicycles and pedestrians. It includes a 16-foot wide pedestrian refuge in the middle in the landscaping area. And it also have rapid flashing beacon lighting, which is actually the same lighting used on the mid-block crossing on Jefferson near City Hall. If you're crossing the street there, you should be very familiar. And the final specifications of this would be reviewed by the city's transportation department at the time of the building permit submittal. And this is typically when the city receives construction level details. Next slide, please. So on top of connecting the crossings from one side of Twin Dolphin to the site, it would also connect the site to the Belmont Creek Trail, which is an existing trail that extends past the site. So the project would widen the existing Belmont Creek Trail. The trail widening would be to 8 feet where feasible. It would include regrading with decomposed granite and improvements beyond the project site. The image here on the slide shows Trail Section A. That's the area that's adjacent to the project site, and that would be maintained by the applicant. Trail Section B, which is maintained by the SBCA, that extends far beyond the project site. And other improvements to this trail and the access include dedicating 3 public spaces, including one of them being ADA on the site for easy access to the trail. Other amenities that the applicant will go into would be a drinking fountain, water filling station. This segment of Twin Dolphin is actually located on the Bay Trail, so it's heavily occupied by cyclists. And of course, the required new sidewalk along Twin Dolphin would be another on-site improvement for pedestrians to connect from the site to the trail. So this project would provide sufficient open space and off-site improvements to warrant the FAR bonus. Next slide, please. And with that, staff recommends adoption of a resolution approving the project based on the compliance with the zoning and general plan standards and the required findings subject to conditions of approval, and based upon the determination that the project is exempt from CEQA. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roja, for your presentation. Any clarifying questions from the commissioners? Raise your hand. Commissioner Hunter.
Thank you. It's a quick one, but I'll see if I can turn on my my background here. I think fairly quick question. The outdoor plaza, is that open to the public? Wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, I'll let the applicant go into that in his presentation. I think he's going to be discussing that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, seeing none, if we could go to the applicant's presentation, please. I believe Steve Lynch from Sandhill will be presenting.
Yes, can you hear me? All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commission. My name is Steve Lynch. I am with Sandhill Property Company, and we do have a short presentation for you tonight. Thank you, Mr. Rojas. That was a very comprehensive summary of our project and the timeline that we've been in the last 2.5 years. Our presentation tonight will cover a little bit more detail in terms of architecture, some of our landscape design, as well as our offsite connections that Mr. Rojas went over. With me is our architect, Ken Rodriguez, as well as our landscape architect, Gary Lehman from Gazardo Partnership. And we also have Will Baumgardner and Angel Sanchez from AirUp for any transportation and traffic related questions or wind related, as well as our civil engineer, Sandis. So with that, I will turn it over to Ken to start our presentation.
Yeah, thank you. This is Ken Rodriguez. Thank you for the invitation before the commission. And as Steve said, Paulo did a really great job on the presentation. So I will be very brief. Let's go to the first slide, the next slide that we have, please. The building, as was mentioned, sits on Twin Dolphin, focuses on the lagoon in Twin Dolphin and out to the water's edge. It's really a beautiful site. We have a series of ground floor spaces. One of the questions from the commissioners was, is the plaza open to the public? Yes, it is. That connection comes straight across from the new trail now, and people who consistently today cross unsafely across Twin Dolphin will now have a very safe crosswalk to come across and get on the trail edge that you can see here just to the left of the lagoon. So this is a view from 100 feet into the lagoon, up looking back at the site across the neighbors, the hotel's landscape, and then Twin Dolphin Drive. Apollo did a nice job of talking a little bit about the architecture. It was very well received by the Shores Associates as well as your architectural review committee. It's a combination of glass, recessed and stepped decks, that have landscaping, outdoor seating. We had our consultant Arup do a very exhaustive wind study to make sure all these decks have good wind protection. They're going to have great views to the water's edge. And then we do have a proposed roof deck on top of the building. It adds a lot more green space to the site, even as much as we already have. And I think will be a real asset to the building and to its occupants. Let's go to the next slide. So the site plan, which was mentioned, I think the only thing I wanted to talk about is the way the site currently exists today. It has landscape area, and then it has parking pushed all the way up to Twin Dolphin and Shoreline Drive. In our discussions with both city staff as well as the Shores Association, they thought, and we do too, we concur, pushing the building to the corner and creating even more landscaping that's there. While the setback is what Apollo talked about, we actually have more landscaping that we're proposing by pushing the building to the corner and no parking along the street edge, which I think just makes for a much better pedestrian experience walking along Twin Dolphin. Next slide. This is a slide from the corner of Twin Dolphin and Shoreline. And you can see that the existing trees that are shown here are very mature. And then we're adding to the existing shrubbery and lawn areas that are there. And we're actually adding a lot more drought tolerant and environmentally friendly plant material, which our landscape architect can talk about in a minute. Let's go to the next slide. The elevations, Apollo touched on them very nicely. It is a combination of the glass, recessed balconies, and then I will talk about the parking garage in a little bit more detail in a second, because I do want to touch on that. But you can see the windscreen and the sale areas that we've added to the public plaza area out in front, as well as the public art that we have located there as well. I think it's going to be a really, really nice space along Twin Dolphin, and very unusual. There isn't a space like it in the park. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So this does show the garage. We spent a lot of time working on this as well. The upper elevation is the elevation you will see from Twin Dolphin, and that the items, the sort of gray items, the design items that are along the right-hand side of that upper elevation are, as Apollo mentioned, a metal kinetic design element structure. So it will move and change as people walk along the creek trail and be looking up and not look at a normal garage. It will, we hope, be a piece of art, sculpture. And then we also have these vine elements that'll grow up the building, as well as some heavy planting against it. We worked with our tenant, the tenant next door behind us, Nikon, and they helped establishing the landscape elements and joint access easements that we both share, those both sites share. Next slide. So this gives you an image of some of the elements, just as a theme board. You can see on the left-hand side, we have some similar outdoor plaza areas with seating, the tensile structures that I showed you previously on the renderings and the elevations, the public art sculpture element, which will be, I think, a fantastic addition there along Twin Dolphin, and then the glass elements of the building, sort of the rounded, softened edges of it. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the tinsel structure, and it is a series of small metal pieces that are all connected together. And again, as I mentioned, move with the wind. So as any of the commissioners or residents or office occupants of the park, residential occupants of the park, walk along Belmont trail, they will see this different kinetic art sculpture on the garage as well. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to our landscape architect, Gary Lehman, for just a brief presentation on the pallet plant material.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm very excited to bring this project before you. It's been a great collaborative effort with many people contributing great ideas all along the way. I think what's most exciting is looking at how the public and the office environment patrons will be able to use the outdoor space and how dynamic those outdoor spaces will be. The pedestrian circulation all around the site is greatly improved, as has been discussed, as well as the amenities created at the central gathering area, just to the left of the office building, as well as a nice gathering space off of Twin Dolphin Drive, really accentuating that building entrance. The auto court has been shaped in the lower right-hand corner to create a really very functional and green and lush treatment there that really helps with wayfinding and really creates a clear presentation of and sense of arrival to the office building as you come off of Shoreline Drive. These are all elements that we sort of work together to develop, and are just very excited to see these progress. And next slide, please. As has been discussed, there's a number of terraces and spaces on the building itself, which creates a really dynamic experience for the tenants, being able to look out and take advantage of the views, be able to get outside of the office and be able to enjoy the outdoor spaces. But also it really helps to enhance and enliven the sense of the building being an active environment that has people in it, and it has a lot of vibrancy to it. So that'll be apparent to anyone who's driving by or walking along the new sidewalks and bike paths, that this building is really a dynamic and active, useful building. Next slide, please. These site sections, I think, really help to portray that. You can see all the layering that happens up on the structure. And then we've taken this sort of sweeping gesture form from the building and really incorporated that into the landscape design with shade sails and walls and sculptural elements that just really create a very dynamic space here. Next slide, please. Again, the sort of the sense of what you'll see from Twin Dolphin, just really an exciting environment for really inviting people to be here. Next slide, please. You know, the landscape palette takes advantage of the existing trees which are there, preserves a number of those high quality trees, and it preserves the landform that's there today. But it also really creates a very dynamic sort of sculptural landform that the planting can derive its energy from. So there's a lot of opportunities for textural and colorful applications of planting, which are very drought tolerant and very sustainable as a result. Next slide, please.
Ooh. Oh, too fast. And these final set of slides, I will jump in, Gary. So these were just looking at some of our offsite connection offerings that Apollo had gone over that. I was going to get into this a little more detail, but for the sake of time, I think we're right about out of time for our presentation. So I will just say we are supporting staff's recommendation. And I truly want to just take an extra couple of seconds to say thank you to city staff. So Apollo Rojas, in my opinion, coming to our SBCA meetings, being involved in some of those meetings, and really taking a lot of extra, frankly, personal time on this project, really is above and beyond the call of duty. And I just want to say thank you for that. I'm truly appreciative of it. So with that, I will turn it back to staff. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission? If you would raise your hand. I am not seeing any. All right, we're going to now open to the public hearing. And following a procedural change for public comment in line with City Council hearings, we will no longer read written comments into the record. We will take a public comment from those joining us through Zoom first. If you have logged into Zoom through your computer, please click the raised hand button now. If you have dialed in, please enter *9 now. If you have dialed in, you may begin speaking once you are signaled that your audio has been unmuted. In order that I could see our timing, anyone who is interested in speaking, if you could raise your hand now so that we have an idea of how many people wish to make a comment. And I am not seeing any raised hands. Okay, I guess we will not be taking any public comment at this time on the project. So if there are no questions, then we will go on to a discussion within the commission. I'd like to open the meeting up to discussion among the commissioners. At this point, I also want to let my fellow commissioners and the public know that I did meet with the developers a couple of weeks ago and got the presentation and an update. So at this point, I am opening it up to discussion among my commissioners. I'm not seeing anyone jump forward. Okay, there we go. Commissioner Shu.
Thank you, Redwood. I don't want to seem presumptuous, but on the possibility that there are no significant concerns on the part of the commission with the project and with the staff recommendation that has been put before us in its entirety, I believe if there's other questions about the project, we may actually be able to also entertain them upon a motion. So I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation in its entirety to further our discussion of the motion in a second. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Shu. Commissioner Hunter.
All right, thank you. I can't believe there's no comments whatsoever, although this is a pretty good project, and I appreciate this has been through so much review by the Architectural Advisory Committee and many meetings with the Redwood Shores Committee. I basically I have one concern, and it's a small one, and hopefully this will not even incur any costs by the developer. But the one thing that's and I should also mention first that I also met with the developer last week in a Zoom meeting, and they described the project to me. It's the first I had learned much about the project. The FAR bonus that the developer is getting is basically based on the new connections to the Belmont Creek Trail, as well as some crosswalks across Twin Dolphin. The trail actually excites me a lot. In fact, I was out there today and I saw what I thought was a surprisingly good number of people on that trail, considering that with shelter in place, there was no employees in any of the building's parking lots, but yet there were people on the trail. So I think when we get back to full use, that will be a very attractive and welcome trail. My question is, 3 shared parking spaces seems like much too few. I like that they are dedicated only to trail usage, but I would like to see there's 15 total parking spaces on that side of the building, on the left side of the building next to the trail, and I would like to either see more spaces dedicated to trail access, or I would actually be happy to if I was told that the other 12 spaces on that side would not be restricted to permit only, and they would be available to the to the public who wants to use that trail. And that's really the only objection I have is I would like to have, I think this is going to be a beautiful trail and I hope it's well used, but we need to have enough parking spaces so people can access it. So I would ask maybe if the developers could talk about that parking there.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunter. Mr. Lynch, would that be you to address that issue?
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you can hear me. So yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hunter. In fact, we looked at a little bit early on when we had Arab come out and take a look at sort of what was happening in the area on the site in terms of pedestrian usage, pedestrian desire lines, where people are coming from, where they're going to. And basically what we learned is virtually everyone, at least in the Shores Business Association area, is essentially an employee walking around the site. This isn't a trailhead that would be a destination, as you and I would see in our county parks or other areas. I mean, this is sort of center in the trail. It's not a starting point, it's not an end point. It's where a lot of employees in the area, take a 15-minute break or a quick lunch or something like that. So we didn't actually see, so on our site today, we don't see anybody parking at all to use this trail, 0. However, our parking today is open. So if you or I were to go out there and park and want to, take a dog for a short walk out there, there's no towing on site. So that's why we are really, seeing this as a pretty significant connection from our site to the waterfront, from Nikon behind us to the waterfront, and from some other businesses actually closer to 101 to be able to get from their site over to the Redwood Slough site. So we're seeing this as a pretty significant connection. That's one thought. The other thought we had, again, if those spaces that are in that area, if the public parks and somehow for whatever reason, miraculously, there's a busy day and 5 or 6 people want to park their cars there, we're not going to tow those cars. That's not what we've done today. It's not what we plan on doing in the future. But in the Shores area, I tell you, if there's one thing we've got a lot of, it's parking. I mean, there's parking everywhere out there today. And you can park in most of private lots. There's no permit parking. We don't foresee permit parking on our site. And most of parking structures, I don't believe they're gate controlled. I think EA maybe, but there's parking everywhere out there. It's not a need. And then the final thought I will say is 15 parking spaces will actually take us out of compliance with city code. So we haven't asked for a variance from parking. Initially we did want to see a reduction in the overall parking on our site. But unfortunately, there's not a parking variance process I was meant to understand. We'd actually have to rezone the site to a PD to be able to achieve a parking reduction. I believe we're only 3 or 4 parking spaces long in terms of extra spaces. So we could not afford to simply dedicate entirely 15. But with that said, we don't, just like today, there's no permit parking. There's no secured parking. It's just open. There's lots of parking. So.
Okay, that sounds good. That answers my concern. I mean, I didn't really need dedicated parking, but I do want to make sure. And the parking signs that are there right now, I mean, obviously the whole thing is vacant, but the signs on that property right now are actually kind of threatening and sort of indicate that it's permit and people will be towed who aren't authorized to park there. So that's all I want is that, if the 15 or the other 12 spaces can be open to the public, and if there is that demand, that they be available. And so that answers my question. Thank you.
No problem. By the way, I apologize. The signs that are up there today, we have had some incidents with homeless, and that's what happens when a building is vacant. So we had to post no trespassing to be able before we could actually tow. So, all right.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Hunter. Any other questions, discussion from the commission? I do have a motion on the table. Do I have anyone to second Commissioner Shu's motion?
I'll second that.
Great. I have a motion by Commissioner Shu and a second by Commissioner Hunter. Ms. Chan, can you do a roll call vote?
Certainly, thank you. Commissioner Martinez,
Yes.
Commissioner Meunier,
Yes.
Commissioner Shu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Yes.
Chair Radcliffe.
Yes.
Let the record show that the motion passes 5 in favor, and Commissioner Bondano and Schmidt shown as recused.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time tonight. We will now go on to matters of commission interest.
Thank you, Chair Radcliffe. So I would like to begin with an exciting announcement, and this is something that we are very excited to welcome our latest member of the planning staff, and it's actually our new assistant director. As of, I think this is our second week, our new assistant director for community development and transportation department, Sue Exline, has joined us, and she previously worked with the city of San Francisco. So she will now oversee the planning and GIS divisions, and she will also take over as the planning staff liaison for the Planning Commission beginning in April. So those of you who have met her will be very excited. She brings a lot of expertise to her team, and we are very, very excited to have her. Also would like to provide just an update on tentative agenda items coming before the Planning Commission in the near future. And this is shown on the screen before you. So on April the 6th, which is our next Planning Commission meeting date, we will bring back the design review guidelines. After 2 study sessions and the last one with the Architectural Advisory Committee, we are wrapping those up for formal recommendation, and we'll bring those back before the Planning Commission, as well as a wireless facility proposal at 2603 Broadway. And that is the Pink Peace Bank building, which is a historic structure, which is why it's coming before you. On April the 20th, we have just a couple of items that are tentative at this point. The wireless facilities ordinance, which the Planning Commission evaluated earlier, I believe this year, as well as 150 Charter, which is a new housing development over by Target. So those are expected in April. And then we also hope to bring back before the Planning Commission just some updates, study session on some industrial land use tables. So we had done some work on land use tables, I think a year or 2 in the past, and we'd like to bring those forward again and to, again, introduce this in a very informal manner at the study session. I also would like to just provide a quick debrief on items of interest at the City Council agenda. And this was also discussed in the public comment. So on March the 8th, the City Council did an introduction and a first reading of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance amendment. At that meeting, there was consensus for moving forward the ordinance with a maximum height of 20 feet. So they will consider it for a second reading on March the 22nd. And also on that same evening, the same agenda, March the 22nd, will be the first reading on childcare and the miscellaneous zoning amendments. So the Planning Commission previously considered those on December the 1st and provided a recommendation to the City Council. So those will be going forward to them on March the 22nd. So that wraps up matters of committee interest.
Great, thank you, Ms. Chan. So that concludes the action items for tonight's agenda. Our next Planning Commission meeting will be scheduled for April 6, 2021, and I will see everyone then. Thank you.